Hello and welcome to Global Review. I am Sachin Chaturvedi. We are presenting to you our weekly program in which we bring to you key developments of the week. As always, let's have a look at the headline. Investment by multinationals further multiply at NOC and Armok signed deal of $44 billion. Eritrea's official visit Ethiopia for first time in 20 years. Putin and Trump summit is likely to be in the third country very soon. India-China demand reduction in North's farm subsidies to work together at WTO. Malaysia's Prime Minister revives disputes with Singapore. Water would be the first target. China eases domestic credit policy, pumps in $100 billion. Last week, we saw one of the most important meeting of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank's annual board meeting in Mumbai. This was the third meeting. The first meeting was in China, the second meeting was in South Korea, and the third meeting in India assumes great importance. It assumes great importance because it brings in the heft that is required in terms of the future direction, the accountability that the project should have, the rules and guidelines that the projects must follow, and also in terms of bringing in the ecosystem that India provides in a natural way to most of the multilateral institutions. In our first segment of the program, we are trying to bring you the key developments at this across the globe. The report that my team has put together with thorough research in terms of how and what happened in Mumbai last week, let's see in this report.
The Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India and the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank AIIB jointly hosted the third annual meeting of AIIB in Mumbai. AIIB, a new multilateral development bank alongside BRICS-led New Development Bank, has a mission to improve social and economic outcomes in Asia and beyond. It commenced operation in January 2016 and has grown to 87 approved members from around the world. India is the second largest shareholder and largest user of AIIB finances. The theme for this year's meeting was Mobilizing Finance for Infrastructure, Innovation and Collaboration. In a run-up to the annual meeting 2018, the Government of India had organized a number of lead-up events in different cities across India aimed to stimulate debates on several important themes of infrastructure. The key infra areas covered under the lead-up events include mass rapid transport systems in Kolkata, port and coastal infrastructure in Visakhapatnam, urban development in Ahmedabad, futuristic, resilient, inclusive and digital infrastructure in Bangalore, physical and social infrastructure for regional development in Guwahati, clean and renewable energy in Bhopal, water and sanitation in Pune, and private sector participation and innovation in resource mobilization in Mumbai. The issues covered in these consultations range various dimensions: global financing needs in infra, alternate technological scenarios and possibilities, legal and international structures, revenue generation models, collaboration and private sector participation. India has emerged as an experimentation hub of range of new infra projects with lessons on scale and innovation. India has prioritized sustainability and inclusiveness in its infra initiatives.
With Prime Minister's ambitious plans in terms of addressing the infrastructure deficit in India, we require huge funding. We require funding not only from domestic resources but also from multilateral banks. India is one of the biggest borrowers from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, from Asian Development Bank and also from the BRICS Bank, which is called as New Development Bank. We take around $2.1 billion from Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The bank has also invested around $100 million in the new facility that India created in form of what is called as NIIF, the National Investment Infrastructure Fund. And this NIF, which has got $100 million funding from AIIB, is also thinking in terms of another tranche of $100 million for its infrastructure financing in the country. It is also extremely interesting to see that the bank is very keen to partner with India in various development projects that are coming in. This meeting assumes importance in light of the new rules and regulations that the bank is setting in. The fact that India was extremely keen with new development bank, which is located in Shanghai, and AIIB in Beijing, we have now tried to create an ecosystem where both the banks are talking to each other. As you know, Asia Development Bank, ADB, which is the regional development bank for the Asian region, recently revised its rules and regulations, and we were getting around $2.5 billion from ADB. Now we are likely to get something close to $5 billion. We are also getting $1.4 billion from World Bank. So in all, you find that between $6.5 to $7 billion is our earning from or our loan basically from the multilateral development banks. And this way, a mega ambitious plan of connecting Northeast with rest of the country through seamless trade, investment flows, but also physical connectivity. To discuss several of these issues today, we have a very eminent panel to discuss dimensions of this, both in the geostrategic context, but also in PR economic sense. We have Professor Sreeram Chaulia here with us, and we are also joined in by Dr. Dinesh Sharma. They would be discussing with us on these and several other issues in the program. So first, let me turn to you, Sreeram, in terms of how you look at the importance and India's connect with the AIIB.
Sachin, you are right in pointing out that it is flowing in the much needed financing from multiple channels, and AIIB in a way is setting the benchmark because the other multilateral bodies are seeing that they should not be left behind. So we have in a way a problem of plenty, and that's good for us.
Yep.
So in the last few years, India has been able to attract a lot of infrastructure financing. As you said, the mechanisms are better. But I'd also like to take up the issue of how China and India, while being usually projected as geopolitical rivals, are also working together in AIIB as well as NDB. I mean, this is a very interesting dimension.
That's what, Sreeram, you would see after Wuhan summit with Prime Minister's consistent efforts. We now find that China and India are coming closer, and we are contributing to the global order which is unfolding in our headlines today. We captured the idea of India and China working together to approach WTO to end developed countries' agriculture subsidies
and tariffs.
And we had also raised issues in terms of technical standards for specific products. So absolutely. India and China, if they work together, the scope and the impact would be huge.
And I think the way we have structured it, Sachin, AIIB, we are the second largest shareholder.
That's right.
The vice president is Indian. Similarly, in NDB, we have done it in such a way that the head may be Chinese, but the next in command is an Indian. So the way we have structured it is that it is overcoming the potential hegemonic element that would come in because China is a bigger player. But the way we have negotiated every inch of the organizational structure, the division of powers, the consultation mechanisms, I think it shows that we have understood the game and we have played it well, because some were initially saying, oh, this is just a Chinese vehicle for domination. But what we have ensured through our involvement, our stakeholdership, is significant level of egalitarian basis, and we are seeing that. You have attended the AIIB event, and you would have seen that, and I'd want you to tell the viewers how India is seen as a front runner in these processes, and not a backbencher which is simply giving a cover to any kind of Chinese hegemony. That's an important general point.
That's right, Sreeram, because if you see the key developments that were there in AIIB, the Prime Minister's address was extremely important in terms of how he called upon AIIB to come up with 5 times of their budgetary allocations
faster
by
and
2022. So he set a new deadline in terms of being ambitious.
And even in NDB, Sachin, just to mention for viewers, you remember that Prime Minister Modi was the one who first highlighted that green and alternative energy should be one of the priority areas. And the Chinese, when they do bilateral lending, for the fact, it's a known fact that they promote coal-based, power plants and such things, which actually increasing the pollution.
But in the AIIB, they say clean, green, and lean.
I think that is our contribution.
Exactly.
That's our contribution.
So that narrative is getting strengthened.
And even if there are 86 members in AIIB, the fact that India is shoulder to shoulder with China and taking the lead, I think it's a very big statement for the rest of the member countries.
Absolutely right. But tell me something, Sreeram, in terms of how we look at the efforts like President Xi in his address mentioned about One Belt, One Road initiative. But to be fair to him, it was not just One Belt, One Road or BRI, Belt and Road initiative that he referred to. He also referred to bringing in narratives like Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. So he was extremely open in terms of whichever country, whoever participants, but everybody coming together for AIIB partnership.
Yeah, and AIIB is very unique, Sachin, in that context, because it's a South-North kind of a based organization, not exclusively only BRICS countries. A number of European, even though the Americans tried to dissuade them, decided to finally join and are participating. Of course, Japan is not there because it has ADB and it leads that front.
That's right.
But nonetheless, Japan is also willing to cooperate. So I think in that sense, we have created a more inclusive setup. Unlike the US, which had actually wanted this institution not to even take off the ground. The fact that you mentioned Belt and Road, and that's important for viewers. Simple matter for clarification. Why did we not join that and why did we join AIIB? I think we have made our point very clear that when it comes to sovereignty and national security concerns, we are uncomfortable with Belt and Road. But AIIB, the way, as I said, it's been designed more beautifully in a way that incorporates our interests and concerns. That's why I think it is progressing. Imagine an AIIB without India. And without Japan anyway is not there, the meaning of an Asian bank itself would have been rendered pointless.
Absolutely
so I think we are making a major contribution if we're proud of the fact.
Yeah, and then the fact that in Mumbai we hosted around 84 finance ministers, and the fact that this meeting played an important role in shaping the contours of regulation, how you assess projects, how you assess impact, and in what way you are delivering. The fact that so far the 34 projects that AIIB has got in, we find that it is largely co-financing which has been done. And that co-financing is part of the new narrative that is coming up with AIIB in terms of blending of resources. And this blending is about AIIB, but it is not just about AIIB, because AIIB is connecting with ADB, with New Development Bank. So they are bringing in. The President Xi also mentioned that they are very keen to go to Latin America. So this would happen. But Sreeram, I wanted to ask you if AIIB, which was a narrative from the South and the first institution apart from NDB, which is playing this important role, how you see possible distinction between World Bank, ADB, etc. on one side and AIIB, NDB on the other. Do we see that alternate take in terms of financing?
Sachin, we say that there is enough room under the tent for every player and that we are not competing. But if you look at the principles behind these different institutions, it's clear that the ADB and the World Bank system have an American dominated hand, which is not present in NDB or AIIB. I think that's the principal distinction. That doesn't mean we are anti-American, but look at the Trump administration, and you mentioned how both China and India find themselves on some issues on the same side, be it on trade or finance or on treatment as a developing country. So I think we have more in common, and therefore the principles in these are different, which means that there will be a southern flavor to this. The way we approach the philosophy and the ethos will be different.
On this, we would have to stop for a break, but don't go away. We have many more things to discuss with you. As you would recall, in the last episode, we discussed with you some dimension of science diplomacy. we told you what exactly science diplomacy is, how it works, and what are its various contours which are important for leveraging our flagship programs like Make in India, and also to connect with fellow developing countries in terms of what we can share with them. Science diplomacy is also very important in terms of what different dimensions it can bring in on table. Let's have a look at this report.
Science diplomacy is defined as the use and application of science cooperation to help build bridges and enhance relationships between and among societies with a particular interest in working in areas where there might not be other mechanisms for engagement at an official level. It is considered significant in the globalizing and technology-intensive era where S&T has become central to international affairs and bilateral or multilateral cooperation. Science diplomacy is considered as a potent tool in tackling common challenges related to health, environment, and national security, and as well as play an instrumental role in achieving the SDGs. There are three key elements in science diplomacy: science in diplomacy, diplomacy for science, and science for diplomacy. The Indian space program is one of the world's fastest growing. Backed by investments for over 5 decades now, India is moving towards increasing its capacity and capabilities of using space technology products and services not only for societal applications but also to support commercial space activities and pursue diplomatic and security objectives. Having armed itself with a strong arsenal of satellites hovering in the orbits above, the Indian Space Research Organisation ISRO recently announced at an international conference that it would open its expertise up to developing nations. The announcement came at Unispace Plus 50 conference, which commemorated the 50th anniversary of the UN Conference on the Exploration and Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. India is now among the leading space powers in the world, renowned for its inexpensive satellite building methods and effective launch capabilities. ISRO is already set to sponsor students from 45 developing countries in 8-week training program that will equip them to build small satellites.
So science in diplomacy, science for diplomacy, and diplomacy for science. All different dimensions, all different permutation combinations require both our preparedness with our diplomatic services to deliver and our science to both absorb and also radiate what we have already gained. And from that point of view, as our research-based report showed, ISRO has come forward and they have identified key areas of capacity building with other countries. In the past, we have already shared several of our insights in space program. So today we are going to discuss issues related to India's space program. As I introduced earlier, we have in the studio Dr. Dinesh Sharma, who is an eminent commentator on India's science diplomacy, but also on science policy. He is also managing editor of India's Science Wire, which as you would see on Twitter, a major program of Vigyan Prasar. So Dr. Sharma, how and what dimensions of India's science policy at the first instance you see as impressive outcome of our diplomatic efforts?
No, as we have seen, space is a key component of India's science diplomacy effort, I would say, because this program has been running for a long time, and in a sense its genesis also is in science diplomacy in some sense, because the announcement which ISRO made on collaborating or using its capability to train people from developing countries was at a conference to commemorate the 50 years of space research, which was initiated by UN.
Yeah.
Because the predecessor of ISRO was the Indian Committee for Space Research, which was a counterpart of the UN Committee for Space Research. So in a sense that our program emanates from a perspective of international cooperation. And when Thumba Equatorial Range was started for launching sounding rockets in 1962, and within 6 years it was declared as a UN facility, and lot of people from several countries came to launch sounding rockets at that time, including from America and USSR. So that became a a kind of a test bed for interaction with the international community, which was small at that time, to engage with Indians at that time.
And this also, Dr. Sharma, bring in a beautiful convergence of our security related concerns, but also developmental dimensions, and India has largely leveraged space accomplishments for our collective development. As Prime Minister announced satellite for South Asia, the purpose was largely to bring in the developmental dimension of it.
Yeah. In fact, that's the key difference between the space program of India and space program of other space agencies, the big ones like USSR at that time, and now ESA and others, that we started as a space program for national development. In fact, the first major program was the SITE, which was a development communication experimental globally, and then we had then we got into communication satellites. So the whole focus of India's space effort in the past 30-40 years has been into how we can leverage this technology for development, and that's why it becomes an attractive platform for other developing countries. And in a way, I would say, by engaging countries which are trying to get into the space arena, ISRO is trying to give back what it learned in all these years. So that's
Dr. Sharma, is there any discussion in terms of how the governance of the space program should be? Because if every country would start launching their satellites and we do not share, we do not economize the space that all of our satellites are going to occupy, unfortunately we don't have unlimited space even in space. So how global governance of space programs of respective countries be viewed? What are the initiatives in this area?
No, there is a global regulatory framework under which the satellite orbits are allotted, so that there is not crowding of particular orbits. But of late, what is happening in the past, I would say 5 or 6 years, is that the whole space business is changing. Not only many countries are joining. I mean, right now there are about 40 national space agencies, I would say. From what 10 years back there were hardly a dozen. So there is an urge on part of several countries to join and hold, make space programs of their own. At the same time, at the other end of the spectrum, we see a lot of small companies getting into space, because there is a shift from launching larger satellites, geostationary satellites, and to low Earth orbit satellites, and a constellation of several satellites, so micro satellites, nano satellites. So there is a shift in the how we deal with space. So that's going to add a new dimension in the next few years. I would say.
Sachin, I just want to add one thing. If you look at the space powers we just mentioned, United States, Russia, European Union, I mean, they have, if you look at their resources at their command, the kind of wealth that they had at one point had, and some of them, of course, Russia has declined, but it still is a major space power. Now, number 4 probably in accomplishments is India, and no other developing country, not even China, has been able to send a Mars mission like we did. The commercial satellite launches. Last year, we were so proud of the fact that 104 satellites we launched in 18 minutes.
We would have to stop here.
So that's the capacity we have, and
Yes.
that is how we need to project ourselves as a poor country, but with great accomplishments. And this is the field to really project our soft power as well.
Time is for Book of the Week. This week we have picked up this extremely interesting book done by Dinesh Sharma, The Outsourcer. The book is on India's experience, India's revolution of the IT sector. In what way we have occupied this place, whether we are just the outsourcing destination or we are becoming part of the technological evolution as well. What do you say?
There are lots of myths and misconceptions connected with this industry. The basic question which often comes to people's mind is, today it's a $150 billion industry. How did we reach there? What did we do right to come to this stage? And that's what I have tried to address in this book, in the sense, what are the building blocks? Did state have a role to play? Was it completely entrepreneurial driven, or were there any particular incentives which the state gave? Because there are a lot of questions, and was it just a result of liberalization, or it predates several decades? So that's in nutshell.
Sreeram, quick comment.
I read Dineshji's book. I must say that he mentions a very important fact. The foundation of this goes back to even pre-independence, and he credits major national science institutions like Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, National Indian Institute of Science. And the point is, if you build a knowledge base, it has dividends beyond your imagination of that generation. If we are today a space power or an IT power, it owes to that original foundations laid long back. So what it means is there is a kind of a path dependence. It means that you must invest in high knowledge, and that is the basis ultimately.
What is happening with this path dependence and with this rich tradition? India, a leader in soft power, in the IT sector, software business, we are the global leaders. But what is happening with our import bill with electronics? Our bill has gone beyond the size of the petroleum bill, and we are paying hugely in terms of our dependence on electronics and electronic related items. We would pick up this question in one of our future episodes. At this point, I need to close and thank my guests on this panel. Thank you. Keep on watching. Give us your comments and ideas to come back to you with much more enriched global review.